Tonight I'm just going to briefly touch on three key points. I'm going to touch on the case for outsourcing energy management. I'm going to talk a little bit about the US markets and how they compare to the UK. And lastly, the key impediments and how some of the policy measures can help overcome these. I think what's coming across loud and clear is the energy and carbon management market's pretty low priority right now. If you read the survey, 9% of you said that you're going to outsource your energy management. I think this is an opportunity, and I'll help explain why. I think in the US, this market started about 30 years ago, and it started in the public school sector. There was a real dearth of funding. There was real problems about infrastructure. Energy bills were extremely high. And the Energy Department in the US came out with a new contract called an Energy Performance Contract, and that was really designed to release cash from in the form of energy savings. Simply put, this coupled guaranteed energy saving with financing from third parties, and this is really a clear example of where the school was buying the result of the project, not the project itself. And I think that's really key when you consider this outsourced market. The banks came to the party and they lent to those people who could guarantee those savings and who had a track record in delivering those. So here we are 30 years on. Billions of dollars of externally financed projects have been deployed into energy management measures through this type of contract, and mainly through outsourced energy managers. I think that's a key lesson for us to learn. If I give you an example of some of the size of these contracts are all fully financed and they're all coupled to a guaranteed energy saving. In the schools and social housing sector, right now there's a $40 million contract underway. In Canada, it's got a guaranteed $5 million energy saving reduction. A university project, $42 million with a $6 million guaranteed saving. I'd ask you, do you have the internal resources to tackle that size of project? And I would go further and I would make the case that it's projects like those that we need in the UK if we're going to shift the dial on energy management. In the UK, we now see similar fiscal conditions to those that existed 30 years ago in the US. And I think we're just starting to see the evolution of the contracting model that I think is going to become the mainstay in energy management in the UK. That's taken the form of, which I know a lot of you will have heard of, the London Development Authority Refit programme. And what that is a framework agreement, and it exposes a large number of public sector bodies right across London. And it allows third parties to tender and bid for projects which will guarantee energy savings. And I think we're starting to see this is the reoccurrence or what happened at the outset of the North American energy performance market. If you look at the stats, energy services market in the UK estimated to grow at a CAGR of 17% per annum between now and 2020. That's going to give you a market size of $6.5 billion per annum. If you put that another way, if you want to move all of the non-domestic building stock from its current EPC energy performance contract or certificate rating up to a C, which would be deemed pretty average, that's going to require about $15 billion of investment, but that comes at an estimated 3-year payback. So it's a pretty compelling case. Give an example of where performance contracts translate into real money. It's in the property sector. We've worked with property purchasers ahead of buying a property, and what an ESCO can do is go in, assess the level of savings that could be gained by doing a project in that building. They then guarantee the savings, and the property developer is using that information to factor that into their purchase price based on increased yield once they've done the project. And that's becoming quite an important financing tool in the property sector. So what I see as the key impediments, I think the first one, and always is, can I be bothered? Every time I talk to people in the sector, it's I've got a million things on my plate, and is this really important? I think it is, and I'll explain a bit more why. Second issue is finance, finance, and there's never enough of it. The third is unrealistic expectations for payback. And the fourth, last but not least, is resource and expertise. So what do I think's in the policy mechanisms right now that I think are going to enable energy management? I think for me the first and foremost is actually the CRC mechanism. I think the recent changes, I'm sure you've read about it, is going to impose what most people have translated to be a carbon tax on utility bills. If you do the maths, my estimation is that works out at about 6.6% tax on your electricity price and about 10% on gas. That's got to be enough to get any finance director interested in carbon and energy savings. I think the Green Deal is an absolutely fantastic opportunity to provide a financial mechanism to enable projects. I would caution, I think it is fraught with implementation difficulties, and I think there will be a huge amount of work to be done. Smart meters have been mentioned. I think at the core of this, information is key for project implementers and financiers. If you want to finance energy savings projects, you want to make sure that it actually did what you promised it would do. And I think the EPC ratings are a tool to drive change, but only if they're backed up with financial incentive or penalty. I think EPCs, as they stand as a standalone mechanism, won't actually affect behaviour. And I'll give you maybe a contrary view to that as well. I was in a health centre last week, and it had an EPC rating of B, which is actually pretty good. That's a good rating. However, you dig below the surface, and the reality is a lot different. It's got 30-year-old oil-fired boilers, no air conditioning. So the reality, that building just doesn't have enough power. It doesn't have enough facilities in the building. You talk to the staff and to the patients, pretty extreme, too cold in the winter, far too hot in the summer. So I think you've got to have a measure of comfort when you consider EPC ratings. As a standalone measure, it's quite narrow. And I think this is one area where the new energy company obligation can address. And though not strictly a policy enabler, I think, at least not yet, the issue of outsourced energy management is key. If you look today, what's required in today's energy and carbon management teams, you need financiers, engineers, project managers, technologists, procurement specialists, people who understand legislation and can lobby to shape it, and most of all can pull that into a compelling business case that a board can support. So I think companies have a very simple choice. You either outsource or you resource. And the question is this really core to your business? Hence my initial observation. I see outsourced energy management as a fast-growing sector once companies truly understand this. No, I'm joking. So one of the key issues, I've got two final points and I'll wrap up. One of the key issues, I think, delivering energy management in the UK right now is the shortage of energy engineers in the UK. We bring all of our energy engineers from North America. It's quite simple. If I'm putting my balance sheet behind a project, I want somebody who's got a track record. And I think a key issue as an industry is we need to develop graduate programs and work with the top universities to train and develop our brightest engineers in this area. So the advances in technology are making business cases more compelling. So here's really my final message. I think we need to get our heads around the fact that putting a new boiler or a control system in a building isn't quite as sexy as solar or wind, but it's a lot more cost effective and it doesn't require a huge subsidy from the government. Before I get lynched by my co-panelists from DEC, my message is not don't do solar or wind, quite the opposite. There's no single solution to this challenge. I think my message is it's a bit like marriage. Don't ignore the truly rewarding stuff underneath your nose in preference for the sexy stuff. Thank you.